The stagecoach wheels kicked up clouds of autumn dust as they rolled into Dry Willow, Montana territory. On a crisp October morning in 1889, Clara Wynne pressed her gloved hand against the window, watching the small town materialize through the haze-weathered storefronts, hitching posts lined with horses, and people who stopped their business to stare at the arriving coach. At 29, Clara stood taller than most women and many men, with auburn hair pinned severely back and gray eyes that had seen too much disappointment to hold naive hope. Her trunk contained everything she owned: 3 dresses, a dozen books, her mother's silver hairbrush, and a carefully wrapped daguerreotype of her parents. But most importantly, it held her teaching certificates from Philadelphia papers that had become worthless when the school board decided she was too forthright and unlikely to find a husband while maintaining such strong opinions. The coach lurched to a stop in front of Hendrick's General Store. Clara gathered her traveling cloak and steadied herself before stepping down. The moment her boots touched the packed earth, conversations halted. A cluster of women near the water trough exchanged glances, their whispers carrying on the wind like dried leaves.
"That's her, the one who wrote ahead about the library."
A library in Dry Willow. Howard says she's got no family, no husband. What kind of woman travels alone? Clara kept her chin level, though each word pricked like a needle. She'd heard worse in Philadelphia, wrapped in prettier phrases, at least here. The judgment came plain. A portly man in a vest approached, mopping his forehead despite the cool air. "Miss Wynne, I'm Ezra Hendrick. Got your letter about renting the old Myers place." "Mr. Hendrick." Clara extended her hand, noting his hesitation before shaking it. "I trust the building is still available." "Well now, about that." Ezra glanced at the growing crowd. "Folks here aren't sure about this library notion. This is cattle country. Miss, men work with their hands, not books. And their wives, their children." Clara's voice remained steady. "Do they not deserve to read to learn?" A bark of laughter came from the saloon porch. 3 men lounged there, passing a bottle. The tallest, wearing a sheriff's badge, called out, "Lady wants respect, thinks she can waltz in here with her fancy Eastern ideas." "I want nothing given that isn't earned." "Sheriff Morrison, and earning respect here means knowing your place." Clara's jaw tightened. "My place, Sheriff Morrison, is wherever I choose to make it." The laughter grew louder, uglier. Men emerged from doorways, drawn by the spectacle. Clara recognized the look in their eyes, the same combination of amusement and disdain she'd faced in Philadelphia. Only here, it came without the veneer of civility. "She thinks she's something special. Too good for kitchen work, I reckon." "Who does she think she is?" Clara turned slowly, meeting each gaze. "I am someone who believes a person's worth isn't determined by whether they wear trousers or skirts. If that makes me proud, so be it." A woman near the millinery shop, young, pretty, with a baby on her hip, caught Clara's eye for a moment. Something flickered there, quickly hidden as her husband's hand settled possessively on her shoulder. The crowd's murmur grew hostile. Clara felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the urge to flee, but she'd run from Philadelphia. She wouldn't run again. "Mr. Hendrick," she said clearly. "About the building." Ezra shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Thing is, Miss, the town council meets tonight. They'll want to discuss whether a woman alone deserves shelter." Clara's voice cut sharp. "Or whether my money spends differently than a man's." Before Ezra could answer, the sound of hoofbeats drew attention to the North Road. A lone rider approached, his horse's gait easy despite the loaded saddlebags. As he drew closer, Clara noticed the wear on his clothes, the competent way he sat his mount, the rifle secured to his saddle. The crowd's attention split between Clara and the newcomer. He dismounted at the store, moving with the economy of someone who spent more time in the saddle than on foot. Dust covered his coat, and several days' growth shadowed his jaw. but his dark eyes were alert, taking in the scene. "Jed Callahan," someone muttered. "Back from the western camps." The man, Jed, tied his horse and walked past the crowd as if they weren't there. But instead of entering the store, he stopped near Clara, pulling off his hat. His hair was dark, threaded with early silver, though he couldn't be past 35. "Ma'am." His voice was low, roughened by trail dust. He studied her with an intensity that should have been rude, but somehow wasn't. "You find accommodations yet?" Clara blinked at the unexpected question. That's being discussed." His eyes shifted to Ezra, then Sheriff Morrison, before returning to her, discussing whether a lady needs a roof come nightfall. Something in his tone made Ezra flush. "Now, Jed," the sheriff started. "This ain't your concern." "Ask the lady, not you, Morrison." Jed didn't raise his voice, but the sheriff stopped talking. To Clara, he said, "There's rooms at Widow Harrow's boarding house, clean, respectable. She doesn't turn away paying customers." Clara found herself studying him in return. His clothes marked him as a working man, yet he carried himself with quiet authority. More importantly, he looked at her directly, not through her like she was invisible, not at her like she was entertainment. "I appreciate the information, Mr. Callahan." He replaced his hat. "And I wasn't being polite, just practical. Gets cold here at night. Wouldn't want you catching ill your first day." He paused, and something that might have been humor flickered in his eyes. Town's got enough troubles without adding that to the list. With that cryptic comment, he turned toward the store, but at the door, he looked back. "That true about the library?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "My mother would have liked that. She believed in books." Then he disappeared inside, leaving Clara standing in a circle of hostile faces, wondering why a dusty cowboy's simple statement felt more welcoming than anything else she'd heard. Sheriff Morrison spat tobacco juice near her boots. "Callahan's got peculiar notions. Don't mean nothing." But Clara noticed how quickly the crowd began dispersing after Jed's intervention. Whatever else he was, Jed Callahan commanded respect in Dry Willow. "The boarding house," she prompted Ezra. 2 blocks down, big white house with green shutters. He seemed relieved to have the matter settled. "I'll have your trunk sent over." Clara made her way down the rutted street, aware of eyes following her progress. The boarding house sat back from the road, its paint peeling but the porch swept clean. An elderly woman answered her knock thin, sharp-eyed, with silver hair in a tight bun. "You'd be the library woman." It wasn't a question. "I'm Mrs. Harrow. Jed said you'd be coming. He was just at the store. Came by the back way first. Said to give you the corner room, 3rd floor, quietest spot in the house." Mrs. Harrow's mouth twitched. "Also hardest to get to uninvited." Clara felt a chill. Uninvited. "You've stirred things up. Some folks don't take kindly to stirring." The widow led her inside. Up narrow stairs. "Room's $1 a week, includes breakfast. No gentlemen callers after 8, no liquor, no loud talk. Can you abide that?" Easily. The room was small, but clean iron bed, washstand, single window overlooking the back garden. Clara set down her carpet bag, relief washing over her at having a door she could close. "That Jed Callahan," she ventured. "He seems unusual." "Mrs.?" Harrow snorted. "That's one word. Man's got his own code. Doesn't suffer fools, doesn't start trouble, but doesn't back down neither. Some say he's difficult. I say he just sees clear." She paused at the door. "Word of advice. This town's got ways of dealing with those who don't fit. You want to survive here, you'd best learn when to bend." "And if I don't want to bend?" The widow's eyes softened slightly. "Then you'd best learn to stand strong, and maybe keep your door locked at night." Alone, Clara unpinned her hair and sat on the narrow bed. Through the window, she could see the mountains rising purple in the distance. Somewhere in this hostile town, she had to build a life. Somehow, she had to prove that a woman could want more than marriage and motherhood without being scorned for it. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Your trunk, miss," came a young voice. Opening the door, she found a boy of perhaps 12 struggling with her luggage. She helped him maneuver it inside, then pressed a penny into his palm. "Thank you, miss." He hesitated. "Is it true about the books?" "Yes." His face lit up before he remembered himself and scurried away. Clara closed the door and turned the lock, hearing Mrs. Harrow's warning echo. Outside, the sun set over Dry Willow, painting the dust-swept streets gold. Clara pressed her forehead against the cool window glass. She'd wanted a fresh start, a place where her past didn't define her. Instead, she'd found the same narrow minds in a different landscape. But she thought of Jed Callahan's quiet authority, the boy's eager face, the young mother's hidden longing. Perhaps there were cracks in this town's rigid facade. Perhaps a determined woman with a trunk full of books could wedge them wider. The first stars appeared over the mountains. Clara lit her lamp and unpacked her few belongings. Tomorrow, she'd face the town council. Tomorrow, she'd begin her fight. Tonight, she simply had to survive until morning. The morning sun cast long shadows across Dry Willow's main street as Clara made her way to the town council meeting. She'd dressed carefully, her most conservative gray dress, hair pinned severely back, mother's cameo at her throat. Respectable, she told herself. Unremarkable. Yet head still turned as she passed. The council met in the back room of Morrison's saloon, a fact that already put her at disadvantage. Clara paused at the entrance, steeling herself before pushing through the doors. Tobacco smoke hung thick in the air, mixing with the sour smell of last night's whiskey. 5 men sat around a scarred wooden table. Sheriff Morrison, Ezra Hendrick, Mayor Hiram Watts with his enormous gray whiskers, banker Theodore Marsh, and rancher Bill Thornton. They looked up at her entrance with expressions ranging from amusement to irritation. "Gentlemen," Clara stood straight, hands clasped at her waist. "Thank you for seeing me." "Miss Wynne," Mayor Watts didn't stand or offer her a chair. "We've discussed your proposal, a library in Dry Willow." "Yes, I have 27 books to start, with plans to order more from Denver. I can teach reading and arithmetic to anyone who—" "Anyone," Thornton interrupted. "My ranch hands got no need for books. They need strong backs and good horse sense. Perhaps their children learn what they need at home." Morrison leaned back, boots on the table. "From their mothers, as nature intended." Clara's jaw tightened. Nature also gave those children minds. Sheriff, minds that deserve— The saloon doors swung open. Jed Callahan entered, spurs ringing against the floorboards. He removed his hat, revealing hair still damp from washing. Unlike yesterday's trail dust. He wore clean clothes, though the gun at his hip suggested he hadn't come for social reasons. "Callahan," the mayor's tone cooled. "This is a closed meeting." "Public council meeting, ain't it?" Jed moved to the bar, helping himself to water from the pitcher there. "Besides, I got business in town. Might as well hear what's being decided about my tax money." Morrison's boots hit the floor. "Since when do you pay taxes?" "Since I filed on the Carson Creek section last spring." Jed turned, leaning against the bar. His eyes found Clara briefly before moving to the council. "You deciding whether Miss Wynne can open her library?" "That's exactly what we're discussing," Marsh said primly. "And frankly, the liability concerns." "Liability?" Jed's eyebrow rose. "From books? From an unmarried woman drawing unsavory elements? From disrupting the social order? From teaching folks to read?" Jed set down his glass with deliberate care. "That what you're afraid of? Marsh, that your customers might start understanding those loan documents." The banker's face reddened. "Now see here." "I see fine." Jed straightened from the bar. I see 5 men deciding what a grown woman can do with her own money and time." He looked at Clara then, really looked at her, with those dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything. "You got a place picked out for these books?" Clara found her voice. "The old Myers building, if Mr. Hendrick will rent it." "That drafty shack," Thornton scoffed. "Roof leaks worse than a sieve." "I can repair it." "You," Morrison laughed. "Going to climb up there in your skirts?" "If necessary." Jed made a sound that might have been approval. "Myers' place has good bones. Just needs work." To Hendrick, "What are you asking for rent?" "Well, that is—" Ezra glanced nervously at the mayor. "Haven't decided if I'm renting to her." "Why not? Her money's good, ain't it?" "It's not about money," Mayor Watts interjected. "It's about community standards. What message does it send, allowing a woman to set up shop like she's a man next thing? They'll all want to vote and wear trousers." "Terrifying prospect," Jed said dryly. "Women thinking for themselves." Clara stepped forward. "Mr. Mayor, I'm not trying to overturn your community standards. I simply want to provide a service." "Service." Morrison stood, hand resting on his gun belt. "We all know what kind of service unmarried women provide." The words hung in the air like a slap. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her voice level. "I beg your pardon." "You heard me. Coming here alone, no family, no prospects. What are decent folks supposed to think?" "They're supposed to think," Jed said quietly, "before they speak." He'd moved without seeming to, now standing between Clara and Morrison. Not threatening, exactly, but his presence created a barrier. "Miss Wynn's reputation is her own business, unless you got proof of wrongdoing. Morrison, I'd watch my tongue. You defending her honor. Callahan, that's rich, coming from you." Something dangerous flickered across Jed's face. "Meaning?" "Nothing." Morrison backed down, but his smirk remained. "Just find it interesting. You taking such an interest in the lady's situation." Jed studied the sheriff for a long moment, then turned to Clara. "How's the room at Widow Harrow's comfortable?" The question seemed innocuous, but Clara caught the undercurrent. "Quite comfortable. Thank you." "Good. She runs a respectable place." His emphasis on respectable made Morrison flush. "To the council," he added. "Seems to me you're wasting time. Lady wants to rent a building, teach folks to read. Either say yes or no, but quit dancing around it like a bunch of old hens." "Now see here," Watts sputtered. "I am seeing—" Jed replaced his hat. "I'm seeing fear. Fear that if women start reading, they might start thinking, might start questioning why they can't own property in their own names, or why their husbands can drink away their egg money." He paused at the door. "My mother could read. Made her a better woman. Not worse. Made her strong enough to raise 2 boys alone after my father died. But then, she didn't have to ask permission from a committee of scared men." He left without another word. The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut. Finally, Marsh cleared his throat. "Well, that was illuminating. Callahan's always been peculiar about women." Thornton muttered, "His mother's doing, no doubt." Mayor Watts tugged at his whiskers. "Still, he's not wrong about one thing. We need to make a decision." He looked at Clara, seeming to see her properly for the first time. "You really think you can run this library yourself? No help, no husband." "I've been taking care of myself for some years now. Mr. Mayor, I think I can manage a few books. And when the ranch hands come in drunk, when the miners from the camps want more than reading lessons." Clara met his gaze steadily. "Then I'll handle it, just as I've handled every other difficulty in my life, with dignity and determination." The men exchanged glances. Finally, Hendrick spoke. "The Myers place is $5 a month. Roof needs work. Like Bill said, floor's solid, though, and the stove works." "I'll take it." "Hold on," Morrison protested. "We haven't voted." "Vote, then." Watts sounded tired. "All in favor of letting Miss Wynne waste her money on a library nobody'll use." 3 hands rose. Watts, Hendrick, and, surprisingly, Marsh. The banker shrugged at the others' looks. "Bad for business, turning away paying customers. Besides, when she fails, we'll have our answer about women and commerce." Clara bit back her response. A victory, even a grudging one, was still victory. Motion passes. Watts banged the table with his fist. "But hear this. Miss Wynne, first sign of trouble, any disruption to the peace, any scandal, any hint of impropriety, and you're gone. That clear?" "Perfectly clear, Mr. Mayor." "Good. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have real business to discuss." Clara left with her head high, though her hands shook slightly as she emerged into the sunshine. She'd won, but at what cost? The hostility in that room had been palpable. Morrison's insinuations still stinging. She nearly collided with someone waiting outside. Jed Callahan leaned against the hitching post, his horse ground-tied nearby. "Congratulations," he said simply. "Were you waiting for me?" "Was waiting to see if they'd show sense." He studied her face. "You all right?" The unexpected concern nearly undid her composure. "I'm fine. Thank you for what you said in there." Said what needed saying. He moved toward his horse, then paused. "That roof really does leak. You know anything about repairs?" "I can learn." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Figured you'd say that." He swung into the saddle with easy grace. "Word of advice, get that roof fixed before the snow comes. Winter here doesn't forgive poor planning." "Mr. Callahan," Clara called as he turned to go. "Why did you speak for me? You don't know me." He considered the question, one hand gentling his restless horse. "Maybe that's why. I don't know you, so I got no cause to judge you. Seems that puts me ahead of most folks in this town." He touched his hat brim. "Besides, my mother would have haunted me if I'd stayed quiet. She had opinions about men who thought books were dangerous." "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was—" Something shifted in his expression, a flash of old pain quickly hidden. "Library's a good idea, Miss Wynne. This town could use more good ideas." He rode off before she could respond, leaving Clara standing in the dusty street. She watched him go, this contradictory man who wore guns but defended libraries, who spoke rough but thought deep. A door slammed nearby. Mrs. Patterson from the Mercantile stood on her porch, arms crossed, glaring. Through windows, Clara glimpsed other faces, some curious, some hostile, all watching. All. She straightened her shoulders and walked toward the Myers building. She had a library to create, a roof to fix, and a town's prejudice to overcome. But for the first time since arriving in Dry Willow, she didn't feel entirely alone. Somewhere in this harsh place, she'd found an unexpected ally. The question was why Jed Callahan had chosen to be that ally, and what it might cost them both. Clara's first week at Widow Harrow's boarding house passed quietly enough. She took her meals in the small dining room, nodding politely to the other boarders. A traveling salesman, 2 railroad clerks, and an elderly seamstress named Mrs. Dunn. They watched her with curious eyes but kept their distance, as if her unmarried status might be contagious. Each morning, she walked to the Myers building, spending her days cleaning years of dust and debris. The work was hard. Her hands soon blistered despite her gloves, but she found satisfaction in seeing order emerge from chaos. By Friday, she'd cleared enough space to arrange her small collection of books on makeshift shelves. That evening, exhausted and covered in dust, she returned to find Mrs. Harrow waiting in the parlor. "You've had a visitor," the widow said, her expression unreadable. "While you were out." Clara's heart skipped. "Who?" "Didn't leave a name, just asked what room you were in. I didn't tell him." "Of course." "What did he look like?" "Youngish, clean-shaven, wore a deputy's badge. Mrs. Harrow's eyes sharpened. Seemed mighty interested in your comings and goings. Deputy Silas Cray. Clara had noticed him watching her around town, always finding reasons to be wherever she went. Unlike Sheriff Morrison's open hostility, Cray's attention felt more personal, more unsettling. "Thank you for not telling him," Clara said quietly. "I run a respectable house. That means respecting my boarder's privacy." The widow paused. "But Clara, may I call you Clara? You need to be careful. This town has ways of testing newcomers, especially women who don't follow the usual patterns." That night, Clara lay wakeful, listening to every creak of the old house. Around midnight, she heard footsteps on the porch below, slow and deliberate. They paused beneath her window, and she held her breath, waiting. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, the footsteps moved away. She rose and peered through the curtains. A figure stood across the street, the glow of a cigarette marking his presence. Even in the darkness, she recognized the casual stance. Deputy Cray. Sleep came fitfully after that. She dreamed of eyes watching from shadows, of whispers that followed her down empty streets. When dawn finally broke, she dressed quickly and slipped out the back way, taking a circuitous route to the Myers building. She'd been working for an hour, sorting books, when someone knocked. Her hands stilled on the volume of Emerson she'd been dusting. "It's open," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. But it wasn't Deputy Cray who entered. Jed Callahan stood in the doorway, hat in hand, carrying a wooden toolbox. "Morning." He surveyed the cleaned space with approval. "Heard hammering when I passed. Figured you might need these." He set the toolbox on her makeshift counter. "Belonged to my father. Been sitting in my shed gathering dust." Clara opened the box, finding well-maintained tools, hammer, saw, various sizes of nails, even a level. "I can't accept these." "Why not?" "Because—" She struggled for words. "People already talk. If they see you here, giving me things—" "Let them talk." He moved to examine the roof, pointing to water stains on the ceiling. "You'll need to patch those spots before the weather turns. October snow can come early here." "Mr. Callahan." "Jed." He turned to face her. "My father was Mr. Callahan, and he'd have wanted his tools used, not sitting idle." His expression grew thoughtful. "You had trouble last night." Clara's surprise must have shown. "How did you—" "Saw Cray hanging around the boarding house when I rode in this morning. He didn't look like a man with official business." "No," she admitted. "I don't believe he was there officially." Jed's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "He bother you directly?" "Just watched from across the street." Watching can turn to more if it's not discouraged. He moved to the window, checking the lock. "This doesn't catch properly. I'll fix it before I go." "You don't have to—" "Miss Wynne." He turned, and she was struck again by the intensity of his gaze. "You planning to argue every time someone tries to help, because that'll get tiresome quick." Despite her anxiety, Clara felt her lips twitch. "I'm not accustomed to help without strings attached." "Fair enough." He pulled out the broken lock mechanism. "Most help does come with strings, but sometimes folks just do what's right because it needs doing." He worked in silence for a moment, then added, "My mother started a school once. Not a library, but close enough. This was back in Kansas, before we came here." "What happened?" "Town burned it down. Said she was putting ideas in wives' heads, making them dissatisfied." His hands never paused in their work. "She rebuilt it. They burned it again. Third time. She taught lessons in our kitchen and dared them to burn that." "Did they?" "No, but they made life hard enough that we eventually moved on. She died 2 years later, still believing people deserve the chance to learn." He tested the repaired lock, nodding satisfaction. "So when I see someone trying to bring books to this town, Facing the same narrow minds, well, I figure helping is the least I can do.
Clara felt her throat tighten. She sounds like she was very brave.
Brave or stubborn, maybe both. He gathered his tools, leaving the box. That window will hold now, but you might want to consider putting curtains up. Makes it harder for folks to see in.
I'll do that.
He headed for the door, then paused. About Cray. He's Morrison's man, does what he's told, but he's also got his own interests. You see him hanging around again. You might mention it to Widow Harrow. She's got a brother who's a territorial judge. Cray knows that. Thank you for the warning and the tools and... She gestured at the window. Everything. No need for thanks. Just doing what needs doing. He settled his hat. You eaten today? The question surprised her. No, I wanted to get an early start. There's a cafe 2 blocks over. Miller's place. His wife makes decent food. And they don't care who eats there as long as you can pay. A slight smile. Mention my name. She'll likely give you extra biscuits. She thinks I need fattening up. He left before Clara could respond. She stood in the empty building, surrounded by her books and the lingering scent of leather and workshop oil from his presence. The repaired lock gleamed dully in the morning light, a small but significant protection. She worked until noon, then took Jed's advice about the cafe. Mrs. Miller, a plump woman with kind eyes, did indeed provide extra biscuits when Clara mentioned who'd recommended the place. That Jed, she said, setting down the plate. Always looking out for folks, even when they don't know it. Fixed my fence last winter, wouldn't take payment, said the sight of it leaning was payment enough. She lowered her voice. Don't mind what some folks say about him. He's good people, just particular about showing it. Clara ate slowly, savoring both the food and the first genuinely friendly interaction she'd had with a townsperson. When she returned to the boarding house that evening, she found Mrs. Harrow in the kitchen, making tea. Join me, the widow offered. They sat at the small kitchen table, the evening light slanting through gingham curtains. No visitors today, Mrs. Harrow said meaningfully. Though I did have a word with my brother. Mentioned some concerns about deputies overstepping their authority. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. The widow's voice was firm. I've run this house for 15 years, since my Henry died. Seen all kinds come through. You're not the first woman to arrive here looking for a fresh start, and you won't be the last. We need to look out for each other. Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Why are you being so kind to me? Maybe because I remember what it was like, being young and alone and wanting more than what the world said I could have. Mrs. Harrow's eyes grew distant. I wanted to be a nurse once. Henry supported the idea, bless him. But after he died, well, a widow running a boarding house was acceptable. A widow studying medicine was not. They sat in comfortable silence as shadows lengthened. Finally, Clara asked, do you regret it not pursuing nursing? Some days, but I've made a good life here, given shelter to those who needed it, been my own woman in my own way. She refilled their cups. That's all any of us can do, carve out our space and defend it. That night, Clara made curtains from an old sheet Mrs. Harrow provided, as she hung them in her room. She thought about spaces carved and defended, about burned schools and rebuilt dreams, about the unexpected kindness of strangers who might become friends. Outside, the street was quiet. No watching figure, no glowing cigarette. Perhaps word had already spread about Mrs. Harrow's brother. Perhaps Deputy Cray had found other entertainment. Or perhaps he was simply waiting for a better opportunity. Clara secured her door and prepared for bed, the donated tools sitting safely in the corner. Tomorrow she would start on those roof repairs. Tomorrow she would continue building her library, one book and one small victory at a time. But tonight, she would sleep knowing that in this hostile town, she'd found at least a few allies. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had a week ago. It was a beginning. The morning sky threatened rain as Clara made her way to Mayor Watts's residence, an imposing two-story house that stood as monument to his mining investments. She'd requested this meeting formally, sending a carefully worded note. Now, standing before his oak door, she smoothed her dress and knocked. "Mrs. Watts answered, a thin woman whose pinched expression suggested perpetual disapproval. She led Clara to the mayor's study without a word. Mayor Watts sat behind a massive desk, spectacles perched on his nose as he reviewed papers. He didn't look up immediately, a clear power play that Clara recognized from her teaching days. "Miss Wynne." He finally acknowledged her.
"I trust this is important. I have a mine inspection in an hour."
"It is important. Mr. Mayor, I'm here about the library." His mustache twitched. Already it's been barely 2 weeks. Having second thoughts. "No, I'm here to formally request permission to establish it as a public service, open to all residents."
"I thought that was understood."
"Was it?" Clara kept her voice level. "Because I've been told by several people that certain members of the community wouldn't be welcome, that wives need their husbands' permission to borrow books, that children of miners and ranch hands shouldn't get ideas above their station." The mayor leaned back. "Miss Wynne, you must understand. Dry Willow has a certain social order. It's maintained peace and prosperity for years."
"Prosperity for whom?" Clara challenged. "I've seen children who can't write their own names, women who can't read the contracts they're asked to sign. Is that the order you're protecting?"
"You Eastern women and your crusades." He shook his head. "This isn't Philadelphia. Miss Wynne, our ways work for us." "I'm not asking to change your ways. I'm asking to offer opportunity to those who want it. And I'm telling you to be careful." His tone hardened. "You're here on sufferance. Push too hard, and that sufferance might disappear." Clara stood. "Then I suppose I'll need to be careful not to push." "Good day, Mr. Mayor." She left with her spine straight but her heart heavy. The threat had been clear: conform or leave. The threatened rain began as she reached Main Street. She ducked into Henderson's general store for shelter, only to find herself face to face with a group of women examining fabric bolts. Their conversation ceased at her entrance. "Ladies." Clara nodded politely. Most turned away, but one, the young mother from her first day, met her eyes briefly. Clara recognized her now as Mrs. Elizabeth Fowler, wife of the bank clerk. "Excuse me," Clara said impulsively. "Mrs. Fowler, isn't it?" The woman glanced nervously at her companions. "Yes? I wanted to thank you for not joining in the unwelcoming comments when I arrived." Pink tinged Elizabeth's cheeks.
"I didn't do anything."
"Sometimes not doing something cruel is its own kindness." "Elizabeth," one of the older women warned, "we should go." But Elizabeth hesitated. "Is it true about teaching reading?" "Yes, to anyone who wants to learn."
"My Sarah's 5, Elizabeth said quietly. "Too young for the school here, they say, but she's bright, already knows her letters."
"Elizabeth," the older woman's voice sharpened, "your husband wouldn't approve." Elizabeth's face closed off.
"Of course. Forgive me, Miss Wynne."
She allowed herself to be pulled away, but Clara caught her backward glance. The rain intensified. Clara purchased what she'd come for, lamp oil and writing materials, then prepared to dash back to the library. But as she stepped onto the boardwalk, she nearly collided with Jed Callahan. He stood under the store's overhang, water dripping from his hat brim. "Miss Wynne." "Mr. Callahan, Jed," she corrected at his look. "Sheltering from the rain, waiting for it to ease before heading to Carson Creek." He studied her face. "You look like someone who's had a trying morning." "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone paying attention." He shifted to give her more room under the overhang. "Mayor Watts."
"How did you—"
She stopped.
"Never mind.
Yes. Let me guess. He warned you about disrupting the social order. Almost those exact words. Man's predictable, I'll give him that. Jed watched the rain forming puddles in the street. You going to heed his warning? Clara considered the question. I'm going to be careful, but I won't close my doors to anyone who wants to read. That's not being careful by his definition. No, she agreed. I suppose it's not. A slight smile crossed his face. Good. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the rain. Then Clara asked, What did you mean the other day when you asked if I'd come here to change things or change myself? Jed was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Most folks who come west are running from something or toward something, sometimes both. The toward folks usually fare better. And which were you? Both. Ran from memories. Toward space to breathe. He glanced at her. You... Toward, Clara said after a moment. Toward a place where I could just be without apology. That's worth finding. The rain began to ease. Jed straightened, preparing to leave. You planning to work at the library this afternoon? Yes, why? Roof still needs patching. This rain'll show you exactly where. He touched his hat brim. Might stop by later, if you need help. He was gone before she could respond, splashing through puddles toward the livery stable. Clara waited until the rain slowed to a drizzle, then hurried to the library. As Jed had predicted, the rain revealed multiple leaks. She positioned buckets and pans, listening to the plink of water on metal. Despite the dampness, she lit a lamp and settled down to catalog her books properly. An hour later, a knock interrupted her work. She opened the door to find Elizabeth Fowler, rain-dampened and nervous. I'm sorry, Elizabeth said breathlessly. I know I shouldn't be here, but... She pressed a small, wrapped bundle into Clara's hands. For the library. Clara unwrapped it carefully. Inside were 3 children's primers, worn but serviceable. They were mine, Elizabeth explained. From when I was young, I kept them hidden, but someone should use them. Mrs. Fowler Elizabeth, this is very generous. I can't come to the library. My husband wouldn't, but perhaps other children could use them. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I loved reading once, before I learned it wasn't seemly for wives to prefer books to needlework. You could still read, borrow books quietly. No, Elizabeth stepped back. I shouldn't even be here. If someone sees... She turned to go, then paused. My mother used to say that education is the one thing that can't be taken away once you have it. I hope you prove her right. She hurried away before Clara could respond. Clara stood in the doorway, holding the precious books, watching Elizabeth's retreating figure. That was brave of her. Clara startled. Jed stood a few feet away, tools in hand. How long have you been there? Long enough. He moved past her into the library. These leaks won't fix themselves. For the next hour, they worked in companionable quiet. Jed on the roof repairs, Clara organizing books. The rain stopped completely, afternoon sun breaking through clouds. Why aren't you married? The question escaped before Clara could stop it. Jed's hammering paused. Direct question. I'm sorry, that was rude. No, just honest. He resumed working. Was engaged once. She died. Influenza, 8 years ago. I'm sorry. Her name was Ruth. Would have liked you. She believed in women thinking for themselves. He climbed down from the ladder. Why aren't you married? Clara smiled wryly. Apparently, I'm too difficult, too opinionated, too tall, too educated, too much. Or maybe the men you knew were too little. The simple statement caught her off guard. She turned away, pretending to adjust books on the shelf. That's a kind way of putting it. Not kind. True. He gathered his tools. Roof should hold now, but you'll want proper repairs before winter.
Thank you. What do I owe you?
Nothing. Jed. You want to pay me? Make this place work. Give folks like Elizabeth Fowler a reason to hope. He moved toward the door. That's payment enough.
At the threshold, he turned back. That question you get asked, about wanting respect. Nothing wrong with that want. Person who can't respect themselves can't respect others. And person who won't respect others isn't worth knowing. Is that why you're helping me? Because you respect me? He considered this. I'm helping because it's right. But yes, I respect what you're trying to do. A pause. And I'm curious. About whether this town's ready for someone who won't apologize for being herself. He touched his hat. Guess we'll find out. After he left, Clara stood in her patched library, surrounded by donated books and the lingering scent of rain. Through the window, she could see the mountains rising clear after the storm. She thought about Elizabeth's hidden primers, about Jed's quiet support, about the mayor's threats and her own determination. She'd wanted to come west to be herself without apology. Now she had to decide if that self was strong enough to stand against a town's expectations. Picking up one of Elizabeth's primers, she opened it to the first page. A is for apple. She read aloud to the empty room. B is for brave. Yes, she thought. B is definitely for brave. The sign in Clara's window read, Mending and Alterations, Reasonable Rates. She'd hung it that morning, swallowing her pride along with her breakfast. The library brought purpose but no income, and her savings dwindled with each passing week. Her first customer arrived before noon, Mrs. Abigail Morrison, the sheriff's wife, carrying a basket of torn linens. The irony wasn't lost on Clara. I hear you do fine needlework, Abigail said stiffly, not meeting Clara's eyes. I do my best, Mrs. Morrison. These need mending. Can you have them ready by Friday? Clara examined the items. Tablecloths, pillowcases, a man's shirt with a ripped sleeve. Yes, that's manageable. They negotiated price in clipped tones. As Abigail left, she paused at the door. You know, Miss Wynne, there are easier ways to make a living. The saloon's always hiring serving girls. Thank you for the suggestion, Clara replied evenly. Friday, then? After Abigail departed, Clara set up her sewing basket in the library's back corner. She could work on mending while keeping the library open. Killing two birds with one stone. The familiar rhythm of needle through fabric soothed her nerves. By afternoon, word had spread. 3 more women brought mending small items, testing her work before committing to anything substantial. Clara accepted each bundle graciously, even when accompanied by condescending remarks. She was hemming a skirt when boots on the floorboards made her look up. Jed Callahan stood in the doorway, holding what appeared to be a leather coat. Afternoon, he said, seeming almost hesitant. Heard you were taking in mending. I am. She set aside the skirt. What do you have? He approached slowly, laying the coat on her makeshift counter. Clara recognized it, the same trail-worn coat he'd been wearing when they met. Up close, she could see multiple tears and worn spots. It's seen better days, he admitted. My own fault. Caught it on wire last week. Made the old damage worse. Clara examined the coat carefully. The leather was quality despite its condition. Soft and well-oiled. This is beautiful work. Where did you get it? Made it, well, my mother and I did. Years back. He ran a hand through his hair. She taught me leatherwork. Said a man should know how to create, not just destroy. She sounds wise. Clara traced a particularly bad tear. This will take time. The leather needs careful handling. No rush. Winter's not here yet. He paused. What would you charge? She calculated quickly. The work would be extensive, but she sensed this wasn't just about the coat. $2. That's too low for the work involved. Then pay what you think is fair. He studied her for a long moment. You're not much of a businesswoman, charging less than your work's worth.
Perhaps. Or perhaps I understand that some things have value beyond money. She folded the coat carefully. I'll take good care of it. I know you will. He turned to go, then stopped. You had any trouble since the mayor's warning? Define trouble. Clara. Her name on his lips was oddly intimate. Don't dodge. This town can be unforgiving. She sighed. Some harassment. Anonymous notes under my door. Someone put a dead rat on my doorstep yesterday. His expression darkened. Any idea who? Does it matter they want me gone? I'm not leaving. Stubborn. Determined. Same thing. Different word. But there was approval in his tone. You need anything, you send word to Carson Creek. My place isn't far. After he left, Clara returned to her mending, but her mind kept drifting to the coat. The stitching showed patience and skill. A mother teaching her son, working together to create something lasting. What kind of man learned leatherwork alongside his mother? What kind of mother raised a son who defended libraries? The next few days fell into a pattern. Mornings for mending, afternoons for the library. A few brave souls actually borrowed books, mostly children sent by parents too proud to come themselves. Clara celebrated each small victory. Thursday evening, she spread Jed's coat on her table at the boarding house, studying how to best repair it without destroying its character. The leather felt like history under her fingers. That's beautiful work. Mrs., Harrow said from the doorway. Haven't seen craftsmanship like that in years. It needs extensive repair. I want to do it justice. The widow entered, examining the coat with knowing eyes. This is Jed Callahan's work. Recognized the style. His mother was known for it. She straightened. You know about her. Only what he's told me, that she was educated, strong-willed. Mary Callahan was the strongest woman I ever met. Came here with 2 young boys after her husband died. Worked any job she could find, but she never let anyone pity her or push her aside. Mrs. Harrow smiled softly. She'd have liked you. Clara concentrated on threading her needle. He said she died 8 years ago. Pneumonia, worked herself to exhaustion that winter, trying to save enough for Jed's wedding. The widow's voice gentled. When his fiancée died that spring, something in him broke. He blamed himself for not being there, for working the mines instead of staying close. That's not rational. Grief rarely is. He retreated to that cabin at Carson Creek, comes to town only when necessary, helps folks when he can, but keeps his distance. She patted Clara's shoulder. Be careful with that coat. It's more than leather to him. Clara worked late into the night, each stitch deliberate and precise. She reinforced the original seams, patched tears in ways that honored the coat's history. As she worked, she thought about loss and isolation, about the walls people built to protect bruised hearts. Friday morning brought a surprise. Elizabeth Fowler stood at the library door, glancing nervously over her shoulder. I can't stay, she said quickly, but I wanted to. That is. She thrust a small package at Clara. Thread, good quality, for your mending work. Elizabeth, you don't need to. Please, it helps me feel useful. Her eyes bright. How are the primers? Are children using them? Yes, young Tom Bailey borrowed one yesterday. Elizabeth's face lit up. Tom's a bright boy. He deserves. She caught herself. I should go. Wait. Clara made a quick decision. Would you like to borrow something you could keep it hidden? Read when you have privacy. Longing flashed across Elizabeth's features before she shook her head. I couldn't. If Charles found out? I understand. Clara squeezed her hand. But if you change your mind, I'm here. Elizabeth fled, leaving Clara holding the thread. Such small acts of rebellion, she thought, such careful courage. That afternoon, she finished the last repairs on Jed's coat. She'd done her best work, making the mending nearly invisible while reinforcing the entire garment. It would last years more now. She was admiring the results when Sheriff Morrison entered, Deputy Cray at his heels. "Miss Wynne." Morrison's tone held false courtesy. "Routine inspection, making sure you're running a legitimate business." "Of course." Clara kept her voice steady as they prowled her small space, opening drawers, rifling through books. Cray fingered the repaired coat. "Nice work. Whose is this?" "A customer's." "Which customer?" His smile was unpleasant. "For our records." Clara met his eyes directly. "I don't discuss my client's business. Deputy, I'm sure you understand discretion." Morrison laughed. "Discretion that's rich, coming from a woman who displays herself daily for any man to see." Heat flooded Clara's cheeks, but she held her ground. "I run a library and mending service. Both honest work." "Honest?" Cray moved closer. "That what you call it being alone with men taking their clothing?" "That's enough." Everyone turned. Jed filled the doorway, his presence making the space feel smaller. His eyes were on Cray, cold and flat. "Callahan." Morrison straightened. "This is official business. Harassment isn't official." Jed stepped inside. "The lady runs 2 legitimate businesses. Unless you have evidence of wrongdoing, I suggest you leave." "You suggesting?" Cray's hand drifted toward his gun. "I'm stating." Jed's voice remained calm, but Clara saw the tension in his shoulders. "You want to make something of it. Deputy, we can step outside. Otherwise, move along." The moment stretched taut. Finally. Morrison jerked his head at Cray. "Come on, we've seen enough." They left, but Cray's parting look promised this wasn't over. Clara released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "You all right?" Jed asked quietly. "Yes, thank you." She retrieved his coat with hands that barely trembled. "It's finished." He examined her work carefully, running fingers over the repaired sections. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "This is..." He stopped, started again. "This is exceptional work. I tried to match the original stitching. Your mother's technique was distinctive." "You saw that?" He looked at her wonderingly. "Most would have just patched it rough." "It deserved better than rough patches." She hesitated. "Like your mother's school deserved better than burning." He was quiet for a long moment, studying the coat. Finally, he pulled out money, far more than she'd asked. "Jed, that's too much." "No, it's what the work is worth." He donned the coat, and it settled on his shoulders like it belonged. "Don't undervalue yourself, Clara. Too many others willing to do that for you." At the door, he turned back. "Morrison and Cray won't let this go. They see you as a challenge to their authority." "I know. Knowing and being ready are different things." He touched his hat brim. "Watch yourself. And remember, Carson Creek isn't far if you need help." After he left, Clara stood in her small domain, surrounded by books and thread, dreams and defiance. She thought of Elizabeth's hidden primers, of Mary Callahan's burnt school, of all the women who'd been told their wants were too much. Her hands still trembled slightly, but her resolve held firm. She had work to do, mending to finish, books to lend, a small space of possibility to defend. The sun slanted low through windows she'd cleaned herself, in a building she'd made her own. It wasn't much, but it was hers. For now, that was enough. The first snow began falling just after dawn, delicate flakes that danced against Clara's window. She dressed quickly, wrapping her shawl tight before venturing out. Winter had come early to Dry Willow, and with it, new challenges. The library felt especially cold as she unlocked the door. Her breath misted in the air as she hurried to start the stove. Once the fire caught, she stood close, rubbing her hands together. Going to be a hard winter. She turned to find Jed in the doorway, arms full of split wood. Snow dusted his shoulders and hat. "I have wood," she protested even as he stacked the logs by her stove. Not enough. This is just the beginning. By December, snow will be past the windows. He straightened, brushing bark from his coat, the one she'd mended. You'll need 3 times what you've got. I'll manage. Managing and freezing are close cousins out here. He studied her thin shawl with disapproval. You need warmer clothes too. I have what I need. Clara. The way he said her name made her stop. Pride's fine until it meets winter. Winter always wins. Before she could respond, he moved to the stove, adjusting the damper with practiced ease. Your chimney's drawing wrong. I'll clean it this week, before the real cold hits. You don't have to. I know. He faced her. But I'm going to anyway. Same way you're going to keep mending that old coat of mine even though it doesn't need it, just to have reason to see me. Heat flooded her cheeks. That's presumptuous. Is it? A slight smile played at his lips. When's the last time a coat needed mending 3 times in 2 weeks? She turned away, busying herself with arranging books. Perhaps you're hard on your clothes. Perhaps. He moved closer, not touching but near enough that she caught the scent of wood smoke and snow on him. Or perhaps we're both finding excuses for what we really want. And what's that? Company. Connection. His voice dropped. Permission to care without the whole town watching. Clara's hand stilled on the books. The town watches anyway. Let them. He pulled something from his pocket, a wrapped bundle. Brought you this. She unwrapped it carefully, finding a thick woolen scarf, beautifully made in deep burgundy. It's lovely, but I can't. It was my mother's. Been sitting in a trunk for 8 years. He took it from her hands, draping it around her neck with careful movements. She'd rather it be worn than molding in storage. The wool was soft against her skin, still holding a faint scent of lavender. Jed. I know what you're going to say. Too personal. People will talk. All of that. His hands lingered on the scarf's ends. But here's what I think. Winter's coming whether we're ready or not, and I'd rather you be warm while you're being stubborn about everything else. A laugh escaped her. I'm not stubborn. No. Then what do you call opening a library in a town that doesn't want one? Determined. Like I said, different word, same meaning. But his eyes held warmth. Will you keep it? She touched the soft wool, his mother's scarf, a piece of the woman who'd taught him to work leather, to respect books, to see beyond society's narrow boundaries. Yes, she said quietly. I'll keep it. Something shifted in his expression, relief, perhaps, or a deeper emotion he wasn't ready to name. Good. Now, about that firewood. They spent the next hour in comfortable companionship, him teaching her about drafts and dampers, her sharing stories of the children who'd started visiting regularly. When he finally left to check his trap lines, Clara felt the library's emptiness more keenly. She was adjusting the scarf when Elizabeth Fowler appeared, cheeks pink from cold and something else. Excitement. I have to be quick, Elizabeth said breathlessly. But I wanted to tell you, Charles is going to Denver on business. 3 whole days. Her eyes shone. Might I borrow a book just for while he's gone? Of course. Clara moved quickly to her shelves. What interests you? Anything, everything. Elizabeth laughed, a sound rusty from disuse. I used to love poetry, Byron, Wordsworth. Clara selected a slim volume of poetry, wrapping it in brown paper. Hide it well. I will. Elizabeth clutched the package like treasure. Thank you so much. After she left, Clara touched the scarf at her throat. Small acts of courage. She thought, Elizabeth borrowing books, Jed offering warmth, herself standing firm despite the town's pressure. The snow continued falling as afternoon deepened. She was closing early, the weather too harsh for visitors. When Sheriff Morrison appeared, he filled her doorway. snow swirling behind him. Miss Wynne, brave of you, staying open in this weather. Was there something you needed? Sheriff? He entered uninvited, tracking snow across her clean floor. Just checking on our resident spinster. Wouldn't want you getting wrong ideas from all this. Attention you've been receiving. I don't take your meaning. Sure you do. He fingered the scarf at her neck. Nice wool. Expensive. Gift from an admirer. She stepped back. My clothing is no concern of yours. Everything in this town concerns me. His voice hardened. Including women who don't know their place. Callahan's been spending lots of time here. He's a customer. I mend his clothes. Morrison laughed. That what they're calling it now, mending clothes? He moved closer. See, I think you're playing a dangerous game, acting respectable while entertaining men alone. Get out! Her voice shook with anger, not fear. Get out of my library! Your library, he smirked. For how long accidents happen in winter? Fires start. Roofs collapse under snow. He touched his hat in mock courtesy. You have a care, Miss Wynne. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen. He left her standing there, fists clenched, fury burning hot enough to warm the room. She locked the door with shaking hands, then sank into her desk chair. A threat, clear and unmistakable, but underneath her anger, determination crystallized hard as winter ice. They wanted her gone. They'd have to do better than threats. She was still sitting there when someone knocked. She approached cautiously. Who is it? Tom Bailey, Miss, my ma sent me. She opened the door to find young Tom, the boy who'd borrowed the primer, holding a covered basket. Ma says you shouldn't be alone in this weather, he said shyly. Sent soup and bread. Tears pricked her eyes. Mrs. Bailey, a miner's wife with 6 children, sharing what little she had. Thank her for me, Tom. And here, she grabbed a book of adventure stories. For you, practice your reading. His face lit up. Really to keep. To keep. After he left, Clara ate the simple meal, warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the soup. Morrison might threaten, but others quietly supported. The town wasn't monolithic in its hostility. That night, she lay in bed listening to wind howl around the boarding house. The scarf hung on her bedpost, a splash of color in the dim room. She thought of Jed's hands adjusting it around her neck, of his certainty that winter would test her resolve. But she also thought of Elizabeth's joy, Tom's excitement, Mrs. Bailey's kindness, for every person who wanted her gone. Another found hope in what she offered. The snow continued falling, blanketing Dry Willow in deceptive peace. Come morning, she'd wake to a transformed world, white, clean, dangerous in its beauty. But tonight, wrapped in borrowed warmth and newfound determination, she allowed herself a different thought. Maybe she wasn't just surviving in Dry Willow anymore. Maybe, despite everything, she was beginning to belong. The wind sang through the eaves, and Clara pulled her quilts higher, the scent of lavender following her into dreams of spring. The Dry Willow Winter Dance was the social event of the season, held annually in the town hall's main room. Clara had seen the preparations for weeks, women discussing dresses, men polishing their boots, children practicing steps in the street. She hadn't planned to attend until Mrs. Harrow cornered her at breakfast. You'll go, the widow said firmly. Show them you're not hiding. I have nothing suitable to wear. Then we'll make something suitable. Mrs. Harrow's eyes gleamed. I've got fabric in my trunk, my daughter's, God rest her, about your size too. That's how Clara found herself standing before her mirror on Saturday evening, wearing a dress of deep green wool that Mrs. Harrow had helped her alter. It was simpler than what most women would wear, but it fit well and brought out the gray in her eyes. You look lovely, Mrs. Harrow said, adjusting the sleeves. Now remember, head high, spine straight. You belong there as much as anyone. Clara wrapped her burgundy scarf around her shoulders like a shawl, drawing comfort from its softness. The walk to the town hall felt longer than usual, her boots crunching through fresh snow. Light spilled from the hall's windows, along with music and laughter. Clara paused at the entrance, gathering courage. Through the glass, she could see couples dancing, children darting between adults, tables laden with food. Taking a deep breath, she entered. The music faltered for just a moment as heads turned. Clara felt the weight of dozens of eyes, some curious, some hostile, most simply surprised. She made her way to the side of the room, pretending not to notice the whispers that followed. Didn't think she'd dare show up. Look at her, acting like she belongs. Morrison says she's trouble waiting to happen. Clara found a spot near the refreshment table, accepting a cup of cider from Mrs. Miller with grateful hands, at least one friendly face. She thought. The musician struck up another tune, a lively reel that had couples forming lines. Clara watched, remembering similar dances in Philadelphia, though none where she'd felt quite so exposed. Miss Wynne. She turned to find Theodore Marsh, the banker, at her elbow. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Marsh, enjoying yourself? The music is lovely. Yes. He moved closer, voice lowering. You know, I've been thinking about your situation. A woman alone, trying to make her way. It must be difficult. I manage. Do you? His eyes traveled over her dress in a way that made her skin crawl. There might be arrangements that could make things easier. A benefactor. Perhaps someone to ensure your bills are paid, your needs met. Clara's stomach turned. I'm not interested in any arrangements, Mr. Marsh. Think about it. His hand touched her elbow. Winter's long. A woman could find herself in desperate circumstances. The lady said she's not interested. Jed's voice cut through the air. He stood behind them, dressed in clean black trousers and a white shirt Clara recognized. She'd mended it last week. His expression was pleasant, but his eyes were cold as winter steel. Marsh released her arm. Callahan, didn't expect to see you here. Didn't expect to see you bothering ladies who've made their feelings clear. Jed moved between them, effectively blocking Marsh from Clara. Don't you have a wife to dance with? The banker's face flushed. I was simply leaving. You were simply leaving. Jed's tone remained mild, but something in his stance made Marsh step back. Of course. Good evening. Marsh retreated, shooting Clara a look that promised this wasn't over. Jed turned to her, and the coldness in his eyes warmed. You all right? Yes, thank you. She managed a smile. You clean up well. Mrs. Harrow threatened me with her rolling pin if I showed up in trail clothes. He glanced around the room. Quite a turnout. Yes, I seem to be providing the evening's entertainment just by existing. Then let's give them something worth watching. He extended his hand. Dance with me. Clara stared at his outstretched hand. That would cause even more talk. Good. His slight smile held challenge and something deeper. Unless you'd rather stand here letting bankers make propositions. That's not fair. Neither is you standing alone while the whole town watches. He wiggled his fingers. Come on, Clara. It's just a dance. But they both knew it wasn't just a dance. It was a declaration, a choosing of sides, a public acknowledgement of what friendship protection, something more. The music started again, a waltz this time, slower and more intimate. Around them, couples were already moving onto the floor. Clara placed her hand in his. The room seemed to inhale collectively as Jed led her onto the dance floor. She was aware of every eye following them, of conversations stopping mid-sentence. But then Jed's hand settled at her waist, her hand in his, and the world narrowed to the space between them. "Relax," he murmured. "You're safe." "Am I?" But she let him guide her into the dance, surprised at his grace. "Where did a cowboy learn to waltz?" "My mother insisted. Said a man should know how to do more than rope cattle." He spun her gently. "Besides, I'm full of surprises." "I'm beginning to see that." They moved together as if they'd done this before, finding an easy rhythm. Clara became aware of his height, one of the few men in town who made her feel petite. His hand was warm through her dress, steady and sure. "People are staring," she said. "Let them." He guided her through a turn. "You look beautiful tonight." Heat flooded her cheeks. "Jed." "Just stating facts. That green suits you." His voice dropped. "Though I prefer the scarf." She laughed despite herself. "You would." "It means something. You wearing it." His eyes held hers. "Means you're not as set on standing alone as you pretend." "I'm not pretending anything." "Aren't you?" He pulled her slightly closer. "Still within propriety, but barely. We both are. Pretending this is just kindness between neighbors. Pretending I fix your roof out of civic duty. Pretending you mend my clothes because you need the money." "I do need the money." "But that's not why you spend extra hours making perfect stitches." His thumb brushed her waist, so light she might have imagined it. "Just like money's not why I bring you firewood." The song was ending. Clara knew she should pull away, return to the edges of the room where she belonged. Instead, she stayed in his arms as the last notes faded. "Thank you for the dance," she said formally. "Clara." He waited until she met his eyes. "I'm not him." Whoever hurt you, whoever made you think wanting something for yourself was wrong." His hand tightened on hers. "I'm not him." Before she could respond, Sheriff Morrison's voice boomed across the room. Well, looks like our librarian's showing her true colors." The crowd parted as Morrison approached, Deputy Cray flanking him. Both had been drinking. Clara could smell the whiskey from feet away. "Dancing like a saloon girl." Morrison continued. "Guess we know now what kind of business you're really running." "Watch your tongue," Jed warned. "Or what?" Morrison's hand dropped to his gun. "You'll defend her honor, what honor?" The room held its breath. Clara felt Jed tense beside her, ready for violence. But before anyone could move, a clear voice rang out. "Sheriff Morrison, you're drunk." Everyone turned. Elizabeth Fowler stood near the door, her husband nowhere in sight. She looked terrified, but determined. "Mrs. Fowler," Morrison slurred. "This doesn't concern—" "It concerns all of us." Elizabeth's voice gained strength. "Miss Wynne has done nothing but offer education and kindness to this town. If dancing at a public event is a crime, then arrest half the women here." "Elizabeth Mrs." Patterson gasped. "Your husband is in Denver, and I'm tired of being silent." Elizabeth looked directly at Clara. "Miss Wynne runs a respectable library. My son is learning to read because of her. If that threatens you, Sheriff, perhaps you should examine why." Other voices joined hers. Mrs. Bailey, Mrs. Miller, even young Tom Bailey piping up about his lessons. Not everyone, not even most, but enough to create a murmur of support that made Morrison step back. "This isn't over," he growled at Clara. "You've corrupted decent women." "The only corruption here," Jed said quietly, "is a lawman who threatens women for educating children." He raised his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe Mrs. Miller's apple pie is being served. Shame to let it go to waste." The crowd began dispersing, drawn by food and the desire to avoid conflict. Morrison stomped off, Cray following, but Clara caught the deputy's backward glance, calculating, promising trouble. "That was brave," Clara said to Elizabeth, who looked ready to faint now that the moment had passed. "Or foolish," Elizabeth's laugh was shaky. Charles will be furious. Then don't tell him, Jed suggested. Town's got enough secrets. What's one more? Elizabeth squeezed Clara's hand and hurried away. The hall was resuming its festive atmosphere, though Clara still felt the weight of watching eyes. We should go, Jed said. You've made your point. What point was that? That you're not afraid. That you have allies. He retrieved her shawl. That you're staying outside. The cold air was sharp relief after the hall's warmth. They walked in comfortable silence, snow crunching beneath their feet. At the boarding house gate, Clara turned to him. You didn't have to defend me tonight. Yes, I did. He touched her cheek. Just a brush of fingers. I meant what I said. I'm not whoever hurt you before. When you're ready to believe that, you know where to find me. He left her standing in the snow, heart racing, skin warm where he touched her. Inside, she found Mrs. Harrow waiting with tea and knowing eyes. Good dance, the widow asked. Eventful, Clara admitted. The best ones usually are. Mrs. Harrow smiled. That Jed Callahan's a good man, you know. I know, Clara said softly. And she did know. The question was whether knowing was enough to overcome the fear of hoping for something more than survival. Outside, snow began falling again, covering the town's sins and secrets alike. But in her room, wrapped in a burgundy scarf that smelled of lavender and possibilities, Clara allowed herself to remember the feeling of dancing in strong arms, of being chosen publicly and defended fiercely. For the first time since arriving in Dry Willow, she went to sleep smiling. The weeks following the winter dance brought unexpected changes to Clara's library. What had begun as a trickle became a steady stream, women arriving with mending, staying to browse books, leaving with volumes hidden in market baskets. Clara had moved her sewing station to the front window, where the light was best and she could see who approached. This Tuesday morning, she worked on a quilt for Mrs. Bailey while 3 children practiced their letters at the table behind her. Miss Clara, young Tom Bailey said, "How do you spell mountain?" "Sound it out," she encouraged. "What do you hear?" As Tom struggled with the letters, the door opened. Clara looked up expecting another customer, but found Elizabeth Fowler, her face drawn and anxious. "Elizabeth, what's wrong?" "Charles returned early from Denver." Elizabeth's voice trembled. "He found the book of poetry. He was displeased." Clara set down her sewing, noting the way Elizabeth held herself carefully, favoring her left side. "Are you hurt?" "It's nothing." But Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "He burned the book. Said no wife of his would fill her head with foolish words." She laughed bitterly. "Then he forbade me from coming here." "I'm so sorry." "I'm not." Elizabeth straightened despite obvious discomfort. "I'm tired of being sorry. Tired of being small." She pulled something from her coat. "I saved this from the fire." It was a single page, edges charred. Byron's words still visible. "She walks in beauty, like the night." "I memorized it first," Elizabeth whispered. "He can burn paper, but he can't burn what's in my mind." Clara felt her throat tighten. "No, he can't." The door opened again. Several women entered together, the usual pretense of coincidence abandoned. Among them was Mrs. Ruth Garrett, the judge's wife, who'd never acknowledged Clara before. "Mrs. Garrett," Clara said carefully. "Miss Wynne." The older woman's expression was unreadable. "I hear you teach reading." "I do." "My kitchen girl, Sarah, is eager to learn. Would you take her as a student?" Clara blinked. The judge's wife, pillar of respectability. Asking her to teach a servant, of course. "Good." Ruth paused. "My husband doesn't need to know. Men worry about the strangest things." A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the gathered women. Clara realized something was shifting. Not acceptance, exactly, but a recognition that what she offered had value. She was threading a needle when hoofbeats thundered outside. Through the window, she saw Jed dismounting, his movements urgent. He burst through the door, bringing cold air and alarm. "Clara, you need to—" He stopped, seeing the room full of women and children. "Afternoon, ladies." "Mr. Callahan," Ruth Garrett said coolly. "Something wrong?" "Maybe." His eyes found Clara's. "Might I speak with Miss Wynne privately?" "Whatever you have to say can be said here." "Mrs. Garrett declared, we're all friends." Jed hesitated, then nodded. "Sheriff Morrison's called a special town meeting. Tonight, says there's been complaints about moral corruption centered on this establishment." The women exchanged glances. Elizabeth went pale. "What kind of complaints?" Clara asked. Though she could guess, the kind that gets places shut down. Jed's jaw was tight. "He's pushing for a vote to revoke your business licenses." "Can he do that?" Mrs. Bailey asked. "With enough support, yes." Jed looked at each woman. "Question is, who's going to speak against it?" Silence fell. Clara saw the fear in their faces, fear of husbands, of judgment, of losing what little freedom they'd found. She couldn't blame them. "I'll speak," she said quietly. "This is my fight." "No." Elizabeth stepped forward. "It's our fight. All of us who've found something here we couldn't find anywhere else." "Elizabeth," Mrs. Garrett warned. "Think of your position." "I am thinking. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly." Elizabeth turned to the others. "How long do we stay silent? How long do we pretend we don't want more than cooking and cleaning and bearing children?" "Those are honorable things," someone protested. "Yes, but they're not the only things." Elizabeth's passion lit her face. "My daughter deserves to read, to choose her own path. Don't yours?" The women stirred uneasily. Clara saw the war in their faces, desire against duty, hope against habit. "I'll come," Mrs. Bailey said suddenly. "Won't speak maybe, but I'll be there." "And I," Mrs. Miller added. One by one, voices joined in. Not all, but enough. Ruth Garrett remained silent until the end, then sighed. "My husband will be furious." She straightened her gloves. "Good thing he's away on circuit until tomorrow." After they left, promising to meet at the town hall, Clara found herself alone with Jed. He stood by her window, tension in every line of his body. "This is my fault," he said. "Dancing with you, being seen here so often, I've given Morrison ammunition." "No." Clara moved to stand beside him. "This was always coming. Men like Morrison can't stand women who won't cower. Men like Morrison can do real damage when threatened." He turned to her. "Clara, maybe you should consider—" "Running," she laughed. "Is that what your mother would have done?" "My mother is dead." The words came harsh. "Sometimes I wonder if fighting every battle was worth the cost." Clara studied his face, seeing old pain fresh again. What really happened to her? Jed? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "She worked herself to death trying to prove she was worth respect. Took in washing, sewing, taught lessons. Anything to save money for my wedding. When Ruth got sick, I was at the mines. By the time I got home," he swallowed. "Both gone within a week. Ma from exhaustion that turned to pneumonia. Ruth from the influenza. I failed them both." "That's not, isn't it?" He faced her fully. "I see you doing the same thing. Working dawn to dusk, fighting battles alone, refusing help, and I think—" His voice broke slightly. "I can't watch it happen again." Clara's heart twisted. She reached out, touching his arm. "I'm not your mother, Jed, or Ruth. I'm not working myself to death. I'm working myself to life." "What's the difference?" "The difference is I'm choosing this. Not because I have to, but because it matters." She squeezed his arm. And I'm not alone, not anymore. He covered her hand with his, warmth seeping through her skin. You terrify me. You know that. Why? Because you make me want things I thought I'd buried. His thumb traced her knuckles. Make me believe in futures I gave up on. Good, she whispered. Someone should believe in futures. He leaned closer, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. Then voices outside broke the spell. He stepped back, hand dropping away. I should check my horse. He moved toward the door, paused. Tonight, don't try to be noble. Let others speak for you. Sometimes accepting help is its own kind of strength. After he left, Clara stood in her empty library, surrounded by evidence of small victories, children's practice papers, borrowed books, mending that paid her bills. Tonight, it might all end. But as she prepared for the meeting, something Elizabeth had said echoed. He can burn paper, but he can't burn what's in my mind. They could close her library. They could drive her from town, but they couldn't erase what had already begun. Women reading, children learning, minds opening to possibilities. She pinned up her hair and wrapped herself in the burgundy scarf. Whatever happened tonight, she'd face it with her head high. She'd planted seeds in Dry Willow. Even if she didn't get to see them bloom, they would grow. The sun set early, painting the snow-covered streets orange and pink. Through her window, Clara saw women leaving their homes in twos and threes, converging on the town hall. Not a crowd, but a presence. She thought of Jed's mother, fighting alone until it killed her. Then she thought of these women, finding courage in numbers, and Jed himself, trying to protect her from his own fears. No, she decided, closing the library door behind her. She wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. The town hall glowed with lamplight ahead, voices already raised in argument. Clara squared her shoulders and walked toward her fate, knowing that whatever came, she'd already won something that couldn't be voted away. She'd proven that one woman wanting respect could inspire others to want it too. And in a town like Dry Willow, that was revolution enough. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a man Clara didn't recognize. Tall, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He introduced himself as William Sterling from the Rocky Mountain Railroad Company. Miss Wynne, he removed his hat. I have a proposition for you. Clara set aside the shirt she'd been mending since the town meeting 3 weeks ago, where the women's unexpected presence had forced Morrison to withdraw his motion. Her library had thrived, but she'd learned to be wary of strange men bearing propositions. What kind of proposition? The railroad is extending a new line through the valley, 20 miles north. We'll need an operations manager at the junction, someone to handle correspondence, accounts, scheduling. He studied her. I've heard about your work here, your education. We could use someone like you. Clara's heart skipped. You're offering me a job. A good job. Salary of $60 monthly, plus housing, real position with real authority. He smiled. The railroad doesn't care if you wear skirts, Miss Wynne, long as you can do the work. $60, more than she made in 3 months of mending and library work combined. Housing without whispers about propriety. Authority recognized and compensated. I need to think about it. Of course, I'll be at the hotel until Monday. He replaced his hat. But don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't come often for women out here. After he left, Clara stood frozen in her library. Through the window, she could see Tom Bailey racing toward the building, book clutched to his chest. Behind him, his mother followed with her weekly mending bundle. Normal sights that suddenly felt precious and fragile. She was still standing there when Jed entered, bringing the scent of leather and winter air. He'd been coming by daily since the meeting, casual visits that fooled no one. Heard you had a visitor, he said, Sterling from the railroad. News traveled fast in Dry Willow. He offered me a job. Something flickered in Jed's eyes. Was it panic? Good job? Very good. Managing the new junction station. That's 20 miles north. Yes. He absorbed this, face carefully neutral. You considering it? Shouldn't I? The words came out sharper than intended. It's everything I claim to want. Respect, authority, independence. Is it? What's that supposed to mean? He moved closer. Intensity in every line. You telling me you'd be happy pushing papers for the railroad? Never seeing Tom master his letters, never watching Elizabeth find her voice, never... He stopped. Never what? Nothing. It's your choice. But his knuckles were white where he gripped his hat. The door burst open. Elizabeth rushed in, eyes bright with excitement. Clara, I've done it. I've left him. Clara's quarrel with Jed forgotten. She guided Elizabeth to a chair. What happened? He hit me again, for singing while I cooked. Elizabeth laughed, wild and free. 20 years of marriage, and he hit me for singing. So I packed a bag, took my grandmother's brooch, and walked out. Where will you go? My sister in Denver. She married well. Always said I could come if... Elizabeth's courage wavered. If I ever found the strength. You gave me that strength. Clara, these weeks of reading, thinking, remembering who I was before I became just Mrs. Fowler. Clara clasped her hands. I'm proud of you. I'm leaving on tomorrow's stage. Elizabeth's eyes filled. I wanted to thank you for everything. They embraced, and Clara felt the weight of Sterling's offer press heavier. How many more Elizabeths might she help, but then wouldn't the railroad job help women too, proving they could handle authority? After Elizabeth left, Jed remained silent and watchful. Say it, Clara demanded. Say what? Whatever you're thinking so hard. He set down his hat with deliberate care. I'm thinking about my mother, how she always chased the next thing that might prove her worth. Never saw that she already had worth right where she was. That's not fair. Isn't it? He faced her fully. You've built something here. Not just a library, a community. Women who'd never spoken up are finding voices. Children who'd never held books are reading. You'd walk away from that for a railroad salary. It's not about money. No, it's about fear. His words cut deep. Fear that what you've built isn't enough. That you're not enough unless some man in a suit validates you with a title. Anger flared. Easy for you to say, you're a man. You've always had choices. Have I? He stepped closer. Do you think I chose to watch my mother die, chose to lose Ruth, chose to spend 8 years alone because I couldn't face failing someone else? He broke off. Someone else you what? Love! The word hung between them like a challenge. There. I said it. I love you. Clara Wynne. Love your stubborn pride and your gentle hands. Love how you fight for others but won't let anyone fight for you. Love that you're too blind to see what you've already won. Clara's breath caught. Jed? You want respect. Look around. Half the women in this town would walk through fire for you. You want independence. You're running your own business, your own life. You want to matter. Ask Tom Bailey if you matter. Ask Elizabeth. Ask me. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. He caught her hands. But if you need to go, go. Chase that railroad job. Prove whatever you think needs proving. Just know you're not running towards something. You're running from it. From what? From this. He pulled her against him, kissing her with 8 years of loneliness and 3 months of wanting. Clara's world tilted, narrowed to his lips on hers, his hands in her hair, the solid warmth of him surrounding her. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers, from the chance at building something together instead of alone. Clara's carefully constructed walls crumbled. I'm scared. Of what? Of staying, of trusting this, of becoming your mother, living only for others until there's nothing left. My mother's mistake wasn't living for others.
His voice gentled. It was thinking she had to earn the right to be loved. You don't have to earn anything. Clara, you just have to choose. A commotion outside interrupted them. Through the window, Clara saw Sterling talking with Sheriff Morrison, their conversation animated. Morrison pointed toward the library, and Sterling nodded. Politics, Jed said grimly. Morrison probably telling him about the troublesome woman he'd be hiring. Clara watched Sterling's expression change as Morrison talked, watched him glance toward her library with new calculation. Her heart sank. The offer might be withdrawn anyway, she said quietly. Maybe, does it matter? Did it? Clara thought about Tom's excited face when he'd finished his first book, Elizabeth's tears over Byron's poetry, Mrs. Bailey's quiet pride when her daughter wrote her name, the women who came for mending but stayed for conversation, finding community they'd never had. Then she looked at Jed, this complicated man who'd seen her truly from the beginning, who'd offered support without ownership, protection without possession. I need to think, she said. He nodded, kissing her forehead softly. Think all you need. Just remember, the railroad goes lots of places, but home's harder to find. He left her standing among her books and dreams, Sterling's offer in one hand and her heart in the other. Through the window, she saw the life she'd built, children racing past, women chatting on corners, men tipping hats as they passed. Ordinary, extraordinary. That night, she sat in a room at the boarding house, writing 2 letters. The first, polite and professional, declining Sterling's generous offer. The second, short and direct, asking Jed to meet her at the library in the morning. She had something to tell him, something about choosing to build rather than chase, about finding home in unexpected places, about the courage to accept love when it came dressed in work clothes instead of promises. Mrs. Harrow knocked, bringing tea. Heard about the railroad job? News travels fast. Small towns, the widow smiled. You staying? Clara thought about Jed's kiss, Elizabeth's courage, Tom's progress, about roots growing deep in unlikely soil. Yes, she said, I'm staying. Good, Mrs. Harrow patted her shoulder. This town needs you. More than that, you need this town. We all need places where we can be ourselves, thorns and all. After she left, Clara sealed both letters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new small victories. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel something she'd resisted since arriving in Dry Willow. She felt like she was home. Snow fell softly outside the library windows as Clara and Jed worked side by side, transforming the small space into something larger. They'd knocked through to the adjacent storeroom. Hendrik had finally agreed to rent it after seeing the steady stream of customers both for books and mending. Hand me that hammer, Jed said from his perch on the ladder. Clara passed it up, their fingers brushing. 3 months had passed since she'd declined the railroad job. Since that kiss that changed everything. They'd moved slowly, carefully, aware of the town's watchful eyes. But something had shifted after her decision to stay. Even Morrison kept his distance, perhaps finally understanding that some battles weren't worth fighting. Miss Clara, Tom Bailey burst through the door, cheeks red from cold. Look, I wrote a whole story. Clara took the pages he thrust at her, scanning his careful letters. Tom, this is wonderful. You've improved so much. Ma says I write better than Pa now. The boy beamed. Will you keep it in the library like a real book? Of course. She ruffled his hair. Every writer starts somewhere. As Tom scampered off, Jed climbed down from the ladder. You know what you've done here. Built a library. Built hope. He gestured at the expanded space. 6 months ago, this town thought educating women and children was dangerous. Now look. Clara surveyed the room, shelves lined with donated books. Comfortable chairs, Mrs. Harrow had contributed. Children's drawings on the walls. Through the window, She saw Mrs. Bailey teaching her daughter letters while waiting for her mending. "We did this," she corrected. "Together." "Together." He moved closer. Sawdust in his hair, paint on his shirt. "About that." "About what?" "Together." His hand found hers. "Clara, I need to ask you something." Her heart accelerated. "Yes." "These past months, working beside you, watching you bloom." He took a breath. "You came here wanting respect. Have you found it?" Clara considered. "Not from everyone, but from the people who matter, yes." "And from me?" "Especially from you." She squeezed his hand. "You've never asked me to be less than I am." "Why would I?" His thumb traced her knuckles. "I fell in love with who you are, not who I might change you into." "Is that what this is, love?" "What else would you call it?" He pulled her closer. "I think about you when I'm working, dream about you at night, plan my days around seeing you. If that's not love, I don't know what is." "Jed!" Her voice wavered. "I'm not good at this. At trusting. At letting someone close." "I know." His forehead touched hers. "But you let the whole town close. One person at a time. Maybe you could try with just one more." The door chimed. They stepped apart as Ruth Garrett entered, now a regular visitor despite her husband's disapproval. "Don't stop on my account," she said dryly. "The whole town knows you two are courting." "We're not," Clara began. "Aren't we?" Jed interrupted. "I'd like to be, officially, if the lady's willing." Clara felt heat flood her cheeks. "This is hardly the place." "Why not?" Ruth settled into a chair. "You've made this library the heart of our community. Seems fitting that matters of the heart get settled here too." More women entered, as if summoned by invisible telegraph. Soon the library held a dozen people, all pretending to browse while obviously eavesdropping. "Jed," Clara whispered. "Everyone's watching." "Let them." He took both her hands. "They laughed when you wanted respect. Let them see you get more than that. Let them see you get love, partnership, a future built on equal ground." I don't know what to say." "Say yes to courtship, to possibility, to not facing winter alone anymore." Clara looked around the room, at the women who'd become friends, the children who'd learned to read, the space she'd created through stubbornness and hope. Then she looked at Jed, patient and steady, offering not ownership but partnership. "Yes," she said simply. A cheer went up. Mrs. Miller clapped. Tom Bailey whooped. Even Ruth Garrett smiled. "Finally." "Mrs.," Harrow said from the doorway. "Been waiting months for you two to stop dancing around it." Jed grinned, pulling Clara close despite their audience. "Was that so hard?" "Terrifying," she admitted against his chest, "but worth it. Like everything else you've done here." They spent the rest of the day working, but with new ease between them. Touches lingered. Smiles came easier. The future felt less like something to survive and more like something to build. As evening approached and the last visitor left, Clara found herself alone with Jed in the expanded library. Golden light slanted through windows, making the dust motes dance. "I have something for you," he said, producing a wrapped package. Clara opened it carefully, finding a leather-bound journal, beautifully crafted with her initials tooled on the cover. "Made it myself," he said. "Thought you might want to write down your story. How a woman came west wanting respect and built a whole community." "Our story," she corrected, running fingers over the smooth leather. "None of this would have happened without you." "Sure it would. Might have taken longer, but you'd have managed." He cupped her face. "That's what I love most about you. You don't need me. You choose me. There's a difference." "Yes," Clara agreed. "There is." She kissed him then, in her library, surrounded by books and possibilities, tasting promise on his lips.
When they parted, she knew with certainty that she'd found what she'd come west seeking. Not just respect, but something richer, a place to belong, work that mattered, and love that strengthened rather than diminished. "That first day," she said, "when you asked about accommodations, did you know even then?" "Know what?" "That I'd stay, that we'd end up here." He smiled. "I knew you were different. Knew you wouldn't bend or break. Knew I wanted to see what you'd build if given the chance. And now? Now I know I want to build alongside you. Library, home, life, all of it." Clara leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. Through the window, dry willow spread before them, still rough, still challenging, but no longer hostile. She'd carved out her space and defended it. More than that, she'd helped others carve out theirs. "They laughed when I wanted respect," she murmured. "They're not laughing now," Jed replied. "No, they weren't. They were reading, learning, growing. They were finding voices long silenced and dreams long deferred, all because one woman had refused to apologize for wanting more." "What happens next?" Clara asked. "Whatever we choose." Jed's arms tightened around her. "That's the beauty of it. We get to write our own story now." Clara smiled, thinking of the blank pages in her new journal, of the expanded library waiting to be filled, of the life stretching before them rich with possibility. She'd come west to be herself without apology. She'd found that and more. She'd found others willing to be themselves too, and a man who loved her not despite her strength, but because of it. The snow continued falling, blanketing dry willow and fresh white, but inside the library, surrounded by warmth and books and love, Clara knew she'd found something worth more than respect. She'd found home, and as Jed had said that first day, asking about more than just accommodations, she'd found her answer to every question that really mattered. In the growing dusk, they stood together, building dreams from hope and trust and the radical belief that everyone, man or woman, rich or poor, deserved the chance to read, to learn, to grow. It was, Clara thought as Jed's hand found hers, a very good beginning to their story. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're watching or listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss your thoughts about Clara and Jed's journey. If you enjoyed this Wild West love story, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help more people discover this tale of courage, respect, and love in the American frontier. Your support means the world and helps bring these historical romances to life.